Hello. While cruising the comments section of our YouTube videos, I came across numerous comments asking for a video on lower back pain. So here it is, several reasons why you get lower back pain when you ride a bike. Yes, I know, I like to wax lyrical about people's saddles being too high, but one of the causes of lower back pain is saddle height. Not excessive, necessarily, but could be insufficient as well. So if you have a saddle that is set too high, what will usually happen is you reach overextension of the right leg and it will pull your pelvis over. You then get to the other side of the stroke, you reach overextension of the left leg, and you pull your pelvis over this side as well. And you end up with a situation where you are mobilizing your lumbar spine. It's that mobilization that can cause you lower back pain. However, it's not just excessive saddle height that can cause this. There are lots of other reasons that will drive instability of the pelvis. Insufficient saddle height could also be one of them. For instance, if the saddle is set too low, when the rider comes through the top of the stroke, it impinges the hip, destabilizes the pelvis and pushes it off to one side. Other side, again, impinges the hip on the other side, and you end up with, again, that situation where the hips are rocking. So when you're out on a ride and you see somebody whose hips are rocking, don't just tell them to knock down the saddle height, because it could be that it's not high enough. Your reach is too long. Now, most human beings possess a lordosis of the lumbar spine, which is basically where the spine in this region is slightly curved, it's slightly flexed. Now, one of the reasons why cycling is quite often prescribed for disc herniations, for instance, is because when you ride a bicycle, rather than the spine being flexed, it enters extension, and that can be enough to alleviate a disc bulge or herniation. However, if the reach is too long, what ends up happening is not only does when you ride a bike, your spine extends, but when the reach is too long, it hyperextends. And that again can be the cause of lower back pain. Insufficient support of the pelvis. Now, this could be driven by lots of different factors. The saddle could be too wide, it could be too narrow, it could be too soft, it could have just completely collapsed. But an insufficient support of the pelvis on the saddle leads to, again, mobilization of that lumbar spine. So ways of checking this, first and foremost, you don't want a saddle that's too soft. The saddle is there to support at least 75% of your weight. If you've got loads of weight on your hands, it's generally a fair indication that the saddle isn't supporting you enough. Furthermore, if you've got numb hands and lower back pain, it's almost absolutely the saddle isn't offering you sufficient support. Furthermore, if you're sat on it wrong, i.e. sat on the nose of it, that's also not going to support you sufficiently, and again, will potentially cause you lower back pain. Your saddle lacks any form of pressure relief. Now, working on the fact that as human beings we were intended to run, jump and climb trees, depending on your religious beliefs, we weren't intended to sit on our genitals on hard pieces of foam. And when that occurs, what usually happens is a very common compensation, which we call posterior rotation of the pelvis. So in English, rather than riding like so with a relatively neutral pelvis and your pelvis engaged with the saddle, what quite often happens is we do a bit of this. And this is generally as a means of the rider trying to alleviate some sort of genital discomfort. So common as this compensation is that a certain saddle brand has developed a marketing strategy and a saddle selection system surrounding it, or surrounding a rider's ability to carry it out. It's called spine concept, which is basically all about how much a rider is able to posteriorly rotate their pelvis. And what that will cause is, we touched on this earlier, is excessive extension of the lumbar spine, cue lower back pain. This is actually surprisingly comfortable. Anyway, this isn't about me, it's about you. So excessive handlebar drop could also be a cause. So if you have a limit through hamstrings, which inhibits your ability to anteriorly rotate your pelvis, it stops you tolerating a low aggressive riding position. Excessive handlebar drop could also result in overextension of that lumbar spine. So if you have a predisposition to lower back pain, that super high-end Italian racing bike that you've been eyeing up might not be the best one. And finally, now this is a little bit straw clutchy, but it is something that we have found in the past, is excessive crank length. So what can happen with excessive crank length is that it will impinge the hips with the top of the stroke. So as you're passing through the top of the stroke, your hip impinges and it destabilizes the pelvis. So there's been quite a lot of talk about shorter cranks always being better in the press recently. I had a guy in here yesterday from, where did he come from? Poland, who wound up on 180mm cranks because he was 6'5". But the point I'm making here is that if the cranks are too long, particularly if you're a smaller rider and you're riding something like a 170mm crank, that can absolutely categorically cause you lower back pain because of the associated hip impingement through the top of the stroke and the destabilization of the pelvis that goes with it. So there we have it. Several reasons why you might be getting lower back pain. If you'd like some help with your back pain woes, please don't forget that we can help this with our bike fitting service. You can book with either myself or any of our fitters here at Bicycle. There is a link in the description below. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you haven't. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.